Welcome back to Home Teams Talk, where caring is the cause. I'm Shaelah Harmon, president of the Bray Applications and co-creator of Home Teams, and I'm joined by Steve, our head coach and visionary. Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you today?
I'm doing good.
Good. Not as sunny as I usually like it, but it's getting there, getting closer. It's supposed to be
It's
70.
getting there. This week's finally getting there.
Yeah.
Oh, you know what? This morning, I heard sparrows. I don't know why they always, make that big deal about the groundhog. It's sparrows when you know spring's hit.
Yeah. Or
You wake up in the
robins.
morning, all of a sudden you hear it starting to
Yeah.
chirp out there, and you're like, oh, it is spring.
Well,
That's cool.
on that, why don't you hit us with some sunshine? Tell us some good news for the day.
So my good news today is kind of a group of good news. But, all we hear about is all the energy problems in the world going on and what are we going to do, and there seems like this fight over it. And all the time there's all these little companies that are just doing amazing things. So two that cracked me up, three actually. One was a group that gets water from air, and how they actually do it with solar power. They can go to like in the middle of the desert and pull water out of the air. And then the second one is like they have this little green hydrogen machine that can power like a home for 14 days, like on a gallon of water. So the cost is a gallon of water. And then the third one was this portable nuclear reactor, and it's you got to see it. It's about from me to you, big, maybe a little bigger than that, and it could power a city for like 7 days. A whole entire city for 7 days on nothing. So anyway, it's just cool. All these little companies out there. Everybody's always talking about all the trouble going on and what are we going to do about the whole global warming and all these things and it's all real. But my point is that there's all these guys out there just trying to solve the problems. It's just fun to see guys like that.
That's pretty cool. The technology has made things pretty exciting.
Yeah.
Today we have the pleasure of chatting with Dr. Tim White, who can also be described as a true visionary and leader, especially in the world of ministry, which is funny because he's also Steve's brother. Dr. Tim is the mastermind behind Washington Cathedral, a place that's more than just a church. It's a vibrant community hub. From humble beginnings over 3 decades ago, Dr. Tim has transformed Washington Cathedral into a thriving campus that boasts everything from art galleries to gyms, theaters, and even a waterfall. However, Dr. Tim's impact doesn't stop there. He's a trailblazer in community outreach, spearheading 5 nonprofit foundations that reach far beyond the church walls. From free medical clinics to educational initiatives, his work extends globally, making a tangible difference in the lives of countless individuals. Not only is Dr. Tim a ministry leader, but he's also an accomplished scholar, holding degrees from esteemed institutions like Eastern Washington University and Fuller Theological Seminary. Plus, his adventures studying archaeology in Jerusalem add an extra layer of intrigue to his story. Beyond his professional endeavors, Dr. Tim is a man of many passions. Whether it's sports, fishing, or golfing, he knows how to enjoy the great outdoors. And let's not forget his literary prowess, with 4 books under his belt that explore innovative concepts in church leadership. With a heart for community, a mind for innovation, and a spirit of adventure, Dr. Tim White is truly a force to be reckoned with. So grab your headphones and join us as we dive into the inspiring journey of Pastor Tim. Welcome, Dr. Tim. It's an honor to have you here this morning.
Nice to be here.
Yeah.
You're very good at that.
Yeah.
You are. You really are.
What's going to be great though is that the running joke in our family is that Tim and I sound exactly the same.
We do.
So trying to tell on the podcast who's speaking, I might
know.
finally sound smart because it'll be Tim talking.
Yeah, he called my wife one time and said, "Hi, babe," or something, and she just totally started talking and thinking she was talking to me.
on the April Fools.
It was on April Fool's. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I just tried to limit it just enough because I knew she'd catch me sooner or later. But I was like, "Hey, Jack." Yeah, I wouldn't say anything. She starts talking.
So did you have to tell her? Did she eventually realize that it was you?
She eventually realized it was me. Yeah. But it was fun. I had her going for a while.
Yeah.
That is pretty fun. So when you guys were growing up, did you guys do a lot of things like that? Or was this more in an adulthood?
Oh, that's an adult thing.
Yeah.
Because our age difference, we probably didn't sound the same when we were kids.
Yeah.
So knowing Steve as an adult now, I feel like he was kind of like a handful as a kid. Being his older brother, were you like, oh man, I have to bail him out again?
No, he was the star. I mean, all of my brothers knew that he was going to do something amazing, and we knew it right from when he was 5 years old.
Wow, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
That's pretty
Of course,
cool.
he could beat us when I was in high school when he was 5 years old in basketball.
Dunking over you.
Sign, yeah.
That's awesome. Well, we're excited to have you here today. It's quite inspiring hearing kind of all the things that you've accomplished.
Yeah, that's inspiring for me. A publisher wrote that, so I hadn't heard that before.
So today you kind of wanted to go over a lot of the things that you've kind of accomplished more in, I think, the ministry side of things and how you've impacted people and really helped them with their purpose in life. So let's dive into that a
Yeah, I
little
think, I
bit.
mean, for me, Tim is kind of the inspiration of what a true Christian is. Is that you guys have all heard me say that many
Yeah.
times, because I feel like a lot of Christians talk the talk real well, but I'm not sure everybody walks the walk. And Tim, when he was a kid, coming up, he was an athlete. He was into athletics, obviously in football mainly, and was kind of a tough kid. And we always thought he was the toughest guy. He always knew who was going to be able to hang on the toughest whenever we went out in the cold or wherever it was. And but then all of a sudden he had this change of heart of what he wanted to do with his life, which was he's going to become a pastor. And the inspiration that he doesn't even realize how many people he affected, because everybody saw this true change in a person. And you hear those stories of people saying, you know, I've changed, but Tim changed. And it even, I think, took us a while to even believe it, because like he said, I'm going to be a pastor. We're like, oh, come on, not you. But sure enough, all of a sudden you saw this person really being a pastor. And that word pastor, you know, a lot of people want to be a preacher or a minister. I guess it's still a pretty accurate word for Tim, but pastor was what Tim was. He was really the person, like my dad, who were, you know, they were not always sitting in a Bible study. They were out at an old folks home or at a assisted living or a hospital or at somebody's house, day in, day out for however many years, 50 years, I hate to say how long, but probably 50 years of just doing that every single day. So to me, what would be interesting to talk to Tim today about, or talk to you about, Tim, is just what it's like to be that caring, you know, that caring process, and what it's like to be with that kind of people, that amount of people, you know.
Yeah, and I want to correct one thing, is I'm not the only one. There's so many Christians around the world. I talked yesterday to a pastor from Brazil, and he's just such a humble, devoted, dynamic pastor down in Brazil. And there's so many all around the world that are really following Christ. But what's funny is that we come from a line of pastors. Our dad is a pastor, and a phenomenal pastor, and our grandpa was a phenomenal pastor. And they were kind of like trying to force me into being a pastor when I was growing up. Like, especially my grandma White, she'd always say I was going to be a pastor. And then mom and dad, you couldn't be a pastor without caring for people. Mom worked at the hospital, so she'd call me all the time and say, Tim, someone's dying. I'm like, I don't even know them. And they don't go to my church or anything. And she'd make sure I was up there and helping them. So
Right.
it's really due to mom and dad and grandpa and grandma.
Right.
Yeah.
A lot of what we do, we talk about purpose. Do you feel like that really connects with you when we talk about purpose? When you say, you know, that was where I found my connection? Because, I mean, you can be a Christian and you can be able to do that, but to really go into that pastor role where you're helping kind of shepherd, do you feel like that really speaks true to you?
I really have enjoyed it. I love it. I continue to do it. And but it's really, yeah, maybe my purpose, but really direct. I give the credit to my parents and grandparents, because they'd even call me when I was working in Seattle, and they're like, what are you doing today? You know, are you taking care of people?
Right.
On my day off, my dad always called and asked what I was doing and told me to get over to the hospitals or something.
Well, I always love the story you've told me before, Tim, and we've all heard, but I've told you guys this story. But when you decided to become a pastor and you went to talk to Grandpa and you said, I want to be a pastor.
Yeah.
And Grandpa said, why?
Yeah.
And you were like, I don't know, trying to think it out
Yeah.
to give him that wise answers, because Grandpa always had those little short, wise answers. And you said, because I love God. And he goes, no, that's why you're a Christian. Why do you want to be a pastor?
Yeah.
And then you thought about it and you said, because I love people. And he said, that's why you're a pastor.
Yeah.
I always love that, because that's the truth. You could always see it in your life, and the truth of getting out and caring for people is relating to them and caring for them,
Yeah.
right? And actually wanting to be with them, loving them,
Yeah.
you know?
I can see now why, I mean, just even as we kind of delve into this, why a lot of our mission is the way that it is. I know you and I worked a lot together as far as, okay, what are we going to do for our mission? What's our purpose behind the company?
Right.
But I mean, we mentioned caring 3 times. It's very obvious that your lineage is so, the foundation of it is so ingrained in caring. I mean, you're talking about your mom who was a nurse, and
Yeah.
what do you do? How are you caring for people? I mean, you and I have these discussions every day. Almost sometimes it's so much about caring for other people. I think that's really
Sure.
cool that you guys have carried that on.
I think, in the times of my life where my life totally blew up, fell apart, don't know what you're on this earth for, health problems, whatever it is, the things you're going through, and you get to this point where you really, I mean, this happens to a lot of people. You're literally saying, what is life even about? Why am I even, what am I trying to do? I can't remember. I mean, you can get so confused. And to me, we call it caring as the cause, but getting to the point of realizing, well, I think that's why we're on this earth, is to care for others and learn to care. And what are your qualifications? Nothing. Got to go out and try to care.
That's right.
It's like at the end of the day, I think we run into that. I don't know if I told you, Tim, but getting ready for our app, I had interviewed over like 1,000 people trying to just understand what were their problems and within their families and what they're doing with their elders. But the thing that kept ringing true is so many people who are going, well, I couldn't really care for somebody. And you'd listen to them and kind of read between the lines, but it was like they had been through a divorce, they'd been through some hard time, maybe they had problems with alcohol, whatever it was, and all of a sudden they feel like, I'm not qualified to actually care. That's like, I need to call a pastor, I need to call somebody to care because I'm not qualified anymore. And the realization that, no, you are qualified. What you need to do is care. When you care, you're qualified.
Yeah.
Now, from there, you go. So to me, that's a beautiful thing that I guess is, like you're saying, kind of like something from our family going all the way back. But when it all shakes down and gets really simple, like I always say, Tim, because Tim and I are both quarterbacks, so now I finally got someone I can talk to.
Yeah, now there's somebody that understands all your.
But I always say life isn't like a passing game where you don't have 15 options. Usually it's more like a wishbone.
Yeah.
You got a couple options. And when you realize that it's that simple, just get down to, okay, what's the option here? The option is to care or not care.
Yeah.
Pretty simple.
And you've always been like that too. Even when you're like in junior high or whatever, you've always been just an amazing, caring person. I mean, he was a great athlete, and just stood out in our community. But like when he was in junior high, he was so popular, and he thought about the kids that weren't popular, and he'd go out of his way to make friendships and help them and to bail them out. And he's done that all along, and every business he's had and everything else has always been your top priority. I've always been proud of you for that.
Thank you.
I can definitely see it. Even to this day, you still do that.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, it's interesting you say that. It's like sometimes I'm always trying to assess. I go back to, I don't remember when I was really young in business, I got to be around Peter Drucker and kind of studying Peter Drucker. And he always says, what business are you in? Mm-hmm. Who's your customer? What value do you bring your customer? And I try to look at my life sometimes that way, and I'll go, so, because you get where you're like, I don't deserve to do anything. I don't know what I'm good at. Okay, what business am I in? It's like, okay, caring, and like, okay, what value to bring. Sometimes it's just being there when no one else will be there for somebody, and just getting to that simplicity of it starts to, especially for people who get depressed and really down. I mean, we all go through horrible times in our life, but how do you walk out of it? That simple.
Yeah.
Just get up that morning and start caring again,
Yeah.
Well, that's interesting because that was kind of what I had been thinking about when you're talking about that. Because a lot of pastors, they have people in their life that are maybe lacking hope. And we also have that, people come to us, we're like, man, we've tried everything. We can't, we don't know what to do,
Yeah,
whether
amazing.
it's health or we don't know how to care for this person, whatever it may be. So what have you found to be successful in helping people find that hope, helping them find, their purpose again in life?
Yeah, well, one of the factors is what Steve was just talking about, is that people that are dying and they don't have hope, their life can be transformed if they start caring for other people. I've seen dying people that kind of get that, even on their deathbed, and they're like, they want to get up and walk over to the next room and care for the person next to them because they heard about what trouble they're in. And so it's an essential part of who we are, because God created this world, and a lot of people have theories about why God created the world, the ontology of it and everything. But in some things, it's just to worship God. I don't think God's like an ego that just needs us to worship Him. I mean, He loves to communicate with us because He loves us. And God created the universe because He loved, and He wanted someone to love. And when we get in touch with that, we're just on the mission of God, and it's just transformative to get into that mission. And it goes all the way through the scriptures, from Jesus telling the story of the Good Samaritan, and the whole point was before the Pharisees and all these other groups, He tells about the priest that goes and won't care for this guy that's hurt beside the road, but it's the Samaritan that everyone's prejudiced about. And the answer to the whole story He's telling is like, who's our neighbor? That was the question. And the point is, everybody's our neighbor. And that breaks down racial prejudice. If you can think of people as being actually something different than you, that are not your neighbor, then you can put them in a Holocaust, or you can make them be a slave, or not give them equal opportunities. And also, even in wars and everything, if you think of everyone's my neighbor, it's really transforms the whole situation. So those very dynamics that you guys are using, and I'm so amazed at your company, are hope for the world.
Yeah. It's so funny because I've met you several times, but I haven't had a long relationship with you, and I didn't get to know your guys' dad as much as I got to know your mom. But knowing her and being there, on a daily basis, I can see why you guys have that, because she would say those same things. I would go there and she'd want to talk about, the caring aspect of things, and I'm worried about this person today, and I'm like, you're worried about that person? You have a broken neck, and you know, all these things, and I'm like, what do you mean you're worried about that person?
Yeah.
But it was her driving force, and so I definitely think that rings true.
Yeah.
She was amazing. There's one of the things that I've been cracking up about lately, Tim, because we have our software is called Home Teams, and so that's what we did with Mom and Dad. You didn't get to be around here too much through that, but we had, like Shaelah be over there, Cassidy be over there, all these different people. We had you have a whole team, and that's the whole concept, is that caring is not a solo project. It is a team thing, and all that you hear in society, or so much, is like, man, my loved one's sick, and man, I don't know what I'm gonna do, and it's rough, and I'm not trying to put that down, because it is probably the hardest thing in the world if you're caring for somebody by yourself. I've done it, and it is really tough. But as a team, the whole experience changes, and like you said, all of a sudden, to watch Mom this last 10, 12 months, where she would, I talked to her and said, she said, well, I don't know how long I'm gonna live. I'm like, okay, but you're living today, so what are you gonna do today? And they need you. And so she started turning around to where the people who were coming to see her, she'd be like, okay, so Shaelah's gonna be here at 9:30. I need to talk to her about, we're gonna learn how to make these popcorn balls, or kids need to know, and whatever it was, she just started caring. Well, she always did care, but I mean, she started keeping her purpose. She got her purpose back that last 10 months, and she just thrived. But it was so fun to watch her. I'd go see her every morning, and sometimes I have to get there 4:30 because I had a lot to do. 4:30, 5:30, and every morning she would be laying there in her chair, and she'd be asleep, and I'd go, Mom, and then she'd go, jump up, and she'd go, I've been awake all night waiting for you. and then the classic line, and she'd say, sit down. And for some reason, this last 10 months, she talked with her hands more. She'd sit down, she'd say, okay, Steve, we have a problem. And then the problem was always that there was somebody that she needed to reach out to. There's somebody she needed to help. It was never about her. She had a broken hip, broken pelvis, GFR of 3. I mean, she was in rough shape. Never about her. The problem was always somebody she needed to help. It was awesome.
She'd get up and cook dinner for Dad with a broken neck.
Yeah, she would. She would.
Yeah. One of the most inspiring things that I hear, lots of inspiring stories, but one of the most inspiring ones that ever touches me deeply is how close you were to Mom, because you were her baby.
Right.
When Steve was going away on a college scholarship to play at UNLV quarterback, she wouldn't say goodbye to him. She wouldn't lock herself in the bathroom. And so I went back and I knocked on the bathroom and I'm like, Mom, Steve's going, don't you want to give her a hug goodbye? And I'm like, I can't, he's my baby. And I'm like, Mom, he's 6'2", he's 195 pounds, and he's not a baby anymore. No, he's always my baby. But when she was dying, it was just she should have died a long time, the doctors thought, before she actually passed away. But Steve was taking care of her just like a nurse or a doctor, just amazing, and like a pastor. But she would say, Steve, am I going to die? And the doctors were saying yes. They'd basically come and say, you're going to die. And Steve would say, not today, Mom, not today. And what an inspirational moment that was.
And I honestly think that's why 10 months. I really do.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
there's in her mind, and we talked this before, thought how much of a power that is to people. But in her mind, she was like, you're right, not today.
Yeah.
Not doing it today. I'm going to find, and it's back around to that purpose. I'm going to find that
Yeah.
purpose.
But the reason Steve's so inspiring like that, and most people are, you can find them janitors, all kinds of people in life, police officers, all kinds of people, but they're at the locus of why we were created. And when you do that, it's amazing what you'll hear come from your own soul, when you say things. There's just a wisdom of the universe when you're in the purpose of God created us to love because he loves, and he wants us to love. He wants us to love him, he wants us to love other people. And when you're at that center of the purpose of the universe, there's just so much wisdom and so much blessings that come out.
Oh, I agree. So on the one side, I know that you had talked a lot about one thing that is inspiring to you is just the amount of people that Tim has gone and seen and, gone to hospitals and assisted living. So what was really the driving force behind that? What were you trying to accomplish in those moments?
Well, my mom and dad made me do it all.
I think that's true in the beginning.
Yeah,
but I do think that you became very passionate about it because people can only influence you so much. Pretty soon you're doing it because it's your own intrinsic motivation to do it. So what was leading you to do that?
Well, I hate to disagree with you, but I usually do disagree with people, but it becomes out of the culture of your family or a church or a business that's so focused that way that it becomes natural because it's what you were made to do and everything. So I just loved it and I thrilled that. But even when I was loving it, I was doing 5 funerals a week and 8 weddings one day, one time.
Oh my gosh! In one day?
Yeah, I had 345 minutes on that day. It was a Christmas Eve.
Was it at least at the same place, or did you drive all around?
I drove around and I was at the same place. Lumber at the same place.
Oh my gosh!
But and it was I loved all that. But all the time, my mom and dad are like, "Did you do that? Did you do this? Are you following through on that?" And here they have their own lives. My dad had a large church and lots of ministries, but he called them like, "Now, Tim, what did you do about this situation?" And it was fun to being a part of that culture. And I see that in families, like in businesses that are just so amazing, as everyone's caring. They get down. Everyone's at that purpose. Everyone has just a wisdom. Even like the little toddler is just like, wow, where did that come from? And it's because they're at the center of the universe. They're where God created us to do, and they're functioning in their best purpose. So, and it's the way we're all designed. Every one of us is designed to love. Even the crankiest, worst murderer that you could he was designed to love. And I remember one time I visited a guy in prison, and he was going to prison for the rest of his life because he'd killed 2 people, but he had been a follower of Christ, and he'd gotten hooked on drugs, didn't even know what he was doing. So I went to visit him in the place where you wait your whole lifers are all there. And back then the prisons were just stinky and smelly and depressing, and I went back to visit him, and all these prisoners were whistling at me and everything like that. And he goes, I know I sinned. He wanted to repent of his sins and to be forgiven. And he said, but what do I do now the rest of my life? I'm just stuck in this terrible place. And I said, you love other people. All these people around you need love, and that's the purpose of your life. And he was a happy prisoner his whole life. And so, being at the locus, I see it everywhere, is that when you get in there, you want to stay. Because like, wow, this is where I was made to do. And there's so many different applications. Like you think of like all the firefighters that are ready to give their life and do give their lives, or all the policemen, or all the moms, single moms that are raising their kids. And they're so profound. Like there's a lady here in the Tri-Cities when I was a youth pastor, and she had a child that couldn't do anything. All they could do is scream. And she had to take care of him 24 hours a day. Wow. So his brother was in my youth group, and I went to visit her one time, and she just looked exhausted. And I said, I can do this for you one day. And she goes, no, this is my purpose. And I said, how do you do this? How do you keep it up? And she said, I love it. I'm at my very best in this situation. And you can see that, wow, there was another Mother Teresa no one knew about. And you'll find that all around the world, people that are at that center of purpose.
Wow. So when you're helping somebody, because I know you've done a lot of kind of at the end of their life, what have you seen kind of in either the family dynamic or to help that person kind of at their last phase? How have you helped them through that?
Well, everyone's different. Everyone has different personalities, and some people don't want to talk about it or anything. Others do want to talk about it. Some people get so caught in themselves they can't get outside of themselves even at that moment. Like there was a person that I was helping in that situation. He had been a postman throughout his whole life and just so loyal, you know. And there's a lot of noble people that have served in that area, but he wasn't a believer or anything like that. And he was in Swedish hospital in Seattle, and they had told him that he's going to die within the next week. And so his wife called me and asked me to go up to visit him, and I went up there and I said, you know, how you doing, Earl? And he said, well, they told me I got a week. And he said, you're a positive pastor. You always bring out the positive. Can you tell me what's good news about that? I didn't have an answer. You know, and he said, besides going to heaven, what's good news about just having a week to suffer and die? And I walked over the window and kind of took a deep breath and looked out over the sound and the city. And I came back and said, I'll tell you what's good news about that. You're alive today. And you've got a grandson that has low self-esteem that's going to come visit you. And he just thinks you're the greatest. And he just hangs on every word that you say. And you get to say some things to him. And you've got a daughter that really needs you. Doesn't know how she's going to go on without you. You've got times to say things to her. And he just got a big tear because he was totally non-emotional. He never wanted to talk about death. When I go visit him before this time, he was stuck in the hospital for like 6 months. I would go visit him and he would we'd play golf together in our minds because he loved to play golf. And but he didn't want to talk about death until this moment. And he got this tear and he goes, that is good news. And he was just so full of life. And you should have seen him with his grandson and his daughter. He was just amazing. So, you know, just kind of keeping people with the focus of that God created us because he loves us. And we go to heaven, we get to be surrounded by love. That's the definition of heaven. And so I think that just leads you into every situation to be able to handle it. Because I was talking to one pastor and he said, you know, I've never had a person become a Christian on their deathbed. And I said, I've never not had one. And hey, Poppy. And see, Poppy wants some love right now too. But I think just that's the way, is just to go in there just loving them and just cherishing life and not, you know, trying to be too optimistic whenever they have terrible news, but to be able to just care for them genuinely, to be there to sit with them and listen to them, not to have all the answers, and to help them. You know, I've been in hospitals where people are vomiting so much and the nurses don't want to always clean up, and I've helped clean up, or, you know, all of the kinds of problems that they can have. And just to do the thing that's right before you, it's like, oh, that makes sense. I'll go get a letter out for this person or whatever. And a lot of people do that in the world. It's not all gone. It just doesn't get a lot of attention.
Yeah. I think that is exactly what we're trying to accomplish too, because those are small things.
Yeah.
But small things all coming together create this beautiful thing. And
Yeah.
that's what really Home Team's, the whole mission behind it is, we can each contribute something.
Yeah.
And you kind of just really tied that all together because you've been in that experience with so many people. It's obvious how impactful that is. End of life, during life.
I think that, you know, I've said it before in one of our podcasts, Tim, it comes down to sometimes for people, like you were talking about the culture that we grew up in our family,
Yeah.
and the culture of caring. But there's always the breakthroughs too. And the breakthroughs come through this crazy thing called forgiveness.
Yeah.
And sometimes the person caring, I mean, it's tough. Even the person who might be dying, they're getting to that point where they can live today. Starts with forgiveness of just saying, okay, so this is my life today. Because it's weird, the person who's passing, I haven't been around as many as Tim, but I've been around quite a few. Sometimes they have a guilt about life. It's like I say, Tim, to some of our clients, this is an interesting scenario. I'm going to back up a little bit and say this, but it's like if I was talking to Shaelah, and Shaelah came to me and she said, I have cancer, or I told her, I'm the doctor, and I say, you have cancer, and it's stage 4, you're not going to make it.
Yeah.
The immediate response from people is, I knew it. I knew I was going to die. I knew I wasn't good enough for this world. I knew. It's weird. They all of a sudden take on this feeling of like, it's kind of like this guilt. I was never good enough kind of feeling as soon as they hear these things. But if I'm the doctor and I say, okay, you have cancer, but I think you can make it. We're going to do this and this and this. Her response isn't, I knew it.
Yeah.
Her response is, do you think so?
Yeah.
And also they go to faith. It's like they have to have faith. Do you really believe there's something that can be done? Yes, I do.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden they jump to this level of faith. And the same thing happens with caring in a different way. It's like, yes, people are in a culture, but there's also people like our grandfather who broke out from a non-caring life, who all of a sudden just breaks out and says, I want to start over today, this very day. Yeah. And so we try to teach caregivers, like you find out, okay, my husband has Alzheimer's. Okay, he's got a battle, but you also have a battle. And it's an exciting, this is the best time in his life and your life. Best time you'll ever have. How do I know that? Because it's the only time you got right now.
Yeah.
So you're going to make it great, but you have to go like, okay, here I go. And you have to take that, jump of faith.
Yeah.
Of going, not like, oh man, I knew I married the wrong guy, I was going to get Alzheimer's. Yeah. I knew it, or whatever it is. People get all these guilt, and I was never a very good wife, whatever it is. Jumping out and saying, okay, today is a great day, and this is going to be the best time of our life, and take that little leap of faith, and then watch, which our grandfather used to call the wonder of it all. Is like all of a sudden, it is amazing how all of a sudden these mini miracles and these other things that happen, that all of a sudden you go, wow, this is the best time of my life. But it started with that faith. That move to care starts with faith.
Yeah, you're so right, Steve. You've got it. You know, it becomes a culture when someone turns that direction, and it infuses through everyone that they're in contact with. There's a person that we both know in the Cadwell family, and Carl and John's mom was such a sweet, sweet person. She was loved so much, and she's cared for so much. And that's infused down to her grandchildren and her great-grandchildren and everything else. Whether they're dentists or whatever they do, they're just such great individuals.
Right.
And caring, and it comes from that. But I was there whenever her young adult daughter passed away, and she in a car accident. And the doctor came in, and he's like, it just choked him up to say it to such a sweet mother, that your daughter's died. And so he said, I hate to tell you, but you know, your daughter passed away. And she just immediately got up, and she went over and said, this must be so hard for you, and started hugging the doctor. And the doctor was just breaking down crying more than she was. But she immediately thought, this must be hard for a doctor. And so she wanted to do that. And then that infuses to a culture for generations. I mean, does it go 10 generations? The Bible promises that it passes on for generations and generations. And so one person can do that. And when a person finds that they're dying, or if they're just crippled or something like that, when they care for the people, it's like God handed them a microphone. Everyone just amazed at it. I had a professor at CBC when I was going to CBC that was a retired pastor, and he had his doctorate degree, so he taught Bible as literature. He would come every day in a wheelchair because he couldn't walk, and he still had use of his arms, and he would pull himself up to the podium. And it would take a long time. And like the first time I'm in class, he starts doing it, I go over and pull him up to the podium. He's like, don't. And he said, put me back down again. I put him back down, and he goes, go take your seat. And then he fought his way up there. And to see that at the beginning of every class was so inspiring, especially for me when I'm trying to be able to walk again. It's just amazing. And that goes all over the world. You'll find that, I find that, you know, in Kenya, I find it in Honduras, Guatemala, Peru, everywhere I travel, I see people and I was like, wow, does the world know about this person?
Right.
They're just totally amazing. And so your company's like that, and you know, your mission and dream is a beautiful dream. It all comes from that. And it's so in line with the purpose of the universe that it's going to be exciting to see all the things that come out of this.
Well, Tim, you were talking about Mom when I went away to college, and she's always been that way. She hated to say goodbye. Mm-hmm. Just something about it. It's like she even told me when I had life flighted with her to Montana. She was like, "Now listen, first of all, if I'm going to die, I don't want to know.
Yeah.
That's
She-
so your mom.
She's like, I don't want to know. I just want to know. I want to know when I'm kind of close and tell me. Maybe she was giving me all these orders like that. And she said, because I don't want people to come say goodbye. She goes, I hate when people come in and they're, because we've been around so much, and she's been around
Yeah.
so much, come in, they're saying like, oh, thank you for everything you did for me in my life. And she goes, I don't want to hear that. Let them talk about their kids, talk about what they're going to do today. She just would stay in the present.
Yeah.
And that was her thing, is to be in the present. But the interesting thing to me, we talk about it a lot, is I feel like in America, and maybe the whole world, but in America, we've like let ourselves down in the fourth quarter. I joke and tell the stories like in football, when it's fourth quarter, we're like, fourth quarter.
Yeah.
Whole team holds their hands up. Everyone gets excited because this is when it all matters, right?
Yeah.
In school, you're like, fourth quarter, I got to get my studies together. It's like
Yeah.
everything's,
If you're Steve.
yeah, if you're me, it's like,
Yeah.
wait a minute. But whatever it is, fourth quarter is always so important. So why is fourth quarter not important in life? Because we have, in our culture, we've accepted the fact like, well, they're not doing very well. We should just put them in a home. And literally, some people don't even want to go see them.
Yeah.
Or it's like this whole feeling, and we're teaching our kids and grandkids, well, Grandpa's kind of a problem now because he's in his fourth quarter and he's got dementia. We just put him away.
Yeah.
And our kids are going, oh, wait, so if I have a problem, you just kind of put me away?
Yeah.
I mean, the whole culture is bad. And it kind of, to me, it leads back to like this kind of how it circles around. It's like our parents cared so much. You talk about mom caring for us when we were little kids.
Yeah.
And what she did for us. I mean, she would give up her life for us, right? And Dad was the same way, and what he did for everybody in his life, in his church. I think partly when he was passing away, he almost had PTSD from so many people that he was with.
Yeah.
But it comes around, and it comes around to that fact that now it's your chance in families, kids, grandkids, great grandkids anymore, is the chance to turn and care for this person. And the hard thing is, and this was hard for Mom, to accept it.
Yeah.
To accept that I've fought the good fight.
Yeah.
And part of continuing to fight the good fight is accepting love.
Yeah.
Letting people help you.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like her life was done. She still had purpose. Like we said, to the very end, she had to reach out to people, but still accepting love. Like Shaelah would go over every night or every other night, I guess, to see Mom. And she learned to accept that and love Shaelah. She's like, Shaylah's going to be here in about 15 minutes. You know? It's like, she loved it, but she had to learn to accept that.
Yeah.
And I think that's one thing we have to learn in caring is accepting care too.
Yeah. Well, there's so much fear a part of life. I mean, the Bible says perfect love casts out fear, but it's something everyone contends with, and especially going into death or any type of crucible that they have to go through, a paralysis or anything in life. It's legitimate. They're afraid. I remember Dad used to tell me, he'd say, I don't mind dying. I believe in heaven and everything. He said, I just don't want to be there when it happens.
He didn't.
And so even for people of faith and everything else to die, it's scary. And what they need is someone to come along and love them at that time.
Right.
And that's what both Mom and Dad, they had the community come out to just love them back as they went through, and people aren't always at their best, but you understand and you care for them. And to being able to accept that, it's been so amazing, like for me to go call on people that are just so upset, so angry at their family and everything. And to be able just to kind of accept that that's part of life, and the people are imperfect. Because caring comes from a place of grace, and grace means unmerited love, God's unmerited love. And so when you come to that point of like realizing everyone's your neighbor, our purpose is to love other people, you just hit a groove of faith and strength. And so to be reminded of that by a family that comes and loves you back is just so profound and so amazing.
It is. And it's like, one of the professors we're going to be having on our show here pretty soon from UCSD, we were talking about the fact that it's also the ability to accept, and that's not as easy as it sounds, but to accept that love from everywhere.
Yeah.
It's like some people aren't lucky like us and have a whole community all around.
Yeah.
But in home teams, you still have some people there. And whether it's one person, whether it's the one smiling child you saw at the clinic today who walked by and said hi, accepting that grace.
Yeah.
And then accepting that in your life you need grace.
Yeah.
And it kind of goes both ways, but it's like that process of being a caregiver or a care receiver is that open channel.
Yeah. And mom and dad were so much, they're carrying what came from a place of grace. Like one time, some guy that was drunk came to their house and went in and just slept on the couch. And so my mom came in and seeing this strange guy sleeping on the couch, she said, "Do you want me to make you breakfast?"
Right.
And so he got me, he was eating breakfast. And then my brother came in and he didn't know who the guy was. He thought it was some friend of my mom. So he's eating breakfast and realizes that he actually broke into the house.
That was not one time. That was many times.
I know.
We used to laugh, Tim and I, because we grew up never sleeping in our beds.
Yeah.
We never did. I got so used to sleeping out on the carpet because you'd come home and like, there's a guy in your bedroom sleeping in there.
I
Like,
know.
okay, no worries.
Or a guy that just got out of prison would join us for Christmas because had no place to go, and I'm kind of like a 10-year-old kid looking at him like, is that guy gonna like murder all of us?
I always jokingly tell these guys that and it's a true story, that every good hunting rifle we had was from somebody that dad had went to their house and there was some kind of problem, domestic violence or something, and they gave the gun away because they didn't want to cause any problems anymore.
Yeah.
So we'd be like, all right, I got a new shotgun.
Wow. Yeah, no, it was.
Remember that?
Yeah.
That was always my favorite one, that Ithaca. It's
Yeah.
a good gun.
Yeah.
Anyway.
But that grace coming in is just a part, you can see it in part of like organizations. You can see, I just read a biography on Elon Musk, and that's what he's trying to do. He has challenges and everything like that. But everyone's motivated, from Bill Gates, trying to give away so much to people. And when that gets to the core of business, it's huge.
Yeah.
They can sell better because they're just trying to help people. And you'll find salesmen like, I don't think that's the right car for you. That's a little over your budget. Let's find a good one for you. And they just want to help people and care for people. And so that place of grace is really the secret weapon of all of it. When it enters the room, and it can enter the room for a toddler, like a toddler is the only one that's graceful. Pretty soon everyone's wanting to hold that toddler and everything like that. It's just so hugely transformed. One time I was called to visit this guy that was just abusing his family when his wife was dying. And so I got a call from the hospital. I came in to see him at, I think it was Virginia Mason that they're at. And this guy was just a huge guy. And, I'm pretty big, but when I shook hands with him, it was like I had a little boy's hand in the middle of a man's hand. And he was just a scary big guy. And everyone was intimidated by the doctors and everything else. And he was just telling his wife what a horrible person she was, using very graphic language and everything. And he was abusing his kids and everything else. And so I said, the doctors told me that there's a lot of tension here, a lot of anger. And I said, we're going to change that right now. Because I know inside of you, there's a graceful person that loved that wife. You were married for like 40 years, and you raised your kids together, and they're amazing kids. And so I actually prayed with him that God would help him to have the grace and the caring at this moment of his wife's death. That guy totally transformed. He went over to his wife, and it was like a completely different picture. This hulk of a man took her hand in his hand and was saying, kept saying, "Pretty girl, I've always loved you. I'm so sorry that all the times that I hit you or different things like that, I never wanted to do that. I don't know why I did that." And the whole room was transformed because a little bit of grace and a little bit of caring came into it. And so any way that we can spread that out, which is the core of your business, the world needs that so desperately right now.
Absolutely.
So that kind of was leading me to a question that I was having, because I do think a lot of times people have, conflict within their family.
Yes.
So maybe they came from a family that was not a loving family, a caring family. How do we help them understand that fourth quarter you still will find, a benefit from doing that?
Yeah, the fourth quarter is huge, like Steve says. I mean, I love Pete Carroll saying that he'd do it with his team all the time. Remember that? He'd go in there and he'd say, "Can you win the game in the first quarter?" And they'd say, "No." And they'd say, can you win in the second quarter? And all the Seahawks would say, no. Can you win it in the third quarter? No. And then he'd say, how about the fourth quarter? And they'd all like, yeah, because they just won a game in the fourth quarter.
Right.
And just knowing that how you finish out is great. One time I was preaching in the here at the my dad's church, and there was just a beautiful young lady that was 9 months pregnant. That was an incredible singer. She got ready to walk up there, and she fell down right in front of the whole crowd. Just
Wow.
ungraceful topple, and it was most people just run away, but she got up. She kind of straightened herself, had tears in her eyes, and was crying. And she started singing this beautiful hymn, and went all the way through it. And I was right after her, and I said, um, it's how you finish that counts. And there's so many lives that have turned around, maybe when they're 20, maybe when they're 10, maybe when they're 80, that how they finish is what counts. And she sang just so glorious. She got a standing ovation.
Wow.
After just people watching the poise that came over, because she wanted to bless people by singing. And it wasn't about her falling in front of everyone and her skirt coming up and all the different things that happened in a terrible fall. She just got up and straightened herself and said, this is my purpose. And everyone had tears in her eyes and was just applauding when she had that moment. And that's what happens even when we hear the story about a kid that maybe has cancer, that's battling it, and everyone wants to come around, they want to help as best they can. And, it ends in just a great ending, great fourth quarter that way.
So kind of to circle back around, I would say that a lot of that, I mean, you mentioned it too, was even a forgiveness side of it then. Like she had a moment where she's tripping and relating to somebody who maybe their parents weren't good to them, or they just have a really controversial relationship, to really go within themselves and kind of forgive and say, I'm going to look past that and I'm going to do this so that they can have a good end of life and I can almost have that peace within myself too.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the thing, is it goes both ways, right? It's this fresh start. I think a lot of people miss that. Forgiving is not just a fresh start for that person. Okay, I'm going to forgive this person. Now they have a fresh start. It's a fresh start for you.
Yes.
And so it goes both ways. And we're talking about this fourth quarter, and we always talk about the fact that America's kind of missed out on this multi-generational family. Because the fact is, like, the person can be 91, 95, 99. Their pure presence is something that the 5-year-old should feel. That pure presence of just being there is something. And so when that presence seems to happen, at least my life, is when you have that fresh start.
Yeah.
And that fresh start really should be every day, every single day. That Dad's saying that this is the day the Lord hath made is because of that. It's like a fresh start. Or Dad's saying, it happens to be in the Bible, but but anyway, that fresh start is like this day, this very day, I'm starting afresh. And when you start afresh, you're allowing the other person to start afresh, and you're allowing that presence, that grace to just fill a room. And it's like you'll see it. You go, I haven't been as many as you, but all the assisted living and old folks' homes we used to go to all the time. We go to every room.
Yeah.
And you just see this or feel this presence of a person when all of a sudden there's love shared.
Yeah.
As soon as there's a caring, kind of that love shared, boom, boom, this fresh start, and now this presence is there.
Yeah.
And that's what's missing, I think, in a lot of families and a lot of people going through these tough times. They're sitting there saying, man, I'm just caring for this person all by myself. I can't do this. Or families like, this is just horrible. I had a lady literally say, she's just running through our inheritance. They're worried about the money that it was costing for their own inheritance. They couldn't get a fresh start and just enjoy this day with that person. But that fresh start goes both ways, I think.
Yeah. And that's part of loving, because loving is a continual forgiveness of everyone. And it's when a just phenomenal ontological miracle takes place inside of a person whenever they start thinking, hey, it's not all about me. It's about how I love. That's going to be important. Like for me, I've had ups and downs and made my share of mistakes and everything, but God blessed me with a wife that's just beautiful, and she's always so loving. And so nothing could be as bad as long as I get to spend time with my wife when I went home. I could have a horrible day and have all this pressure, but I'd come home and have fun with her. And that's the way anyone that's in a loving relationship, you have to forgive. There was a article on personality, psychology of personality, and it's in the last month, and it said the focus of people that are wise, people that understand something of life, is the phrase from the Beatles song, "Let It Be." To know that you're not in control, that you can just say, here's this person that's bad, angry, they're attacking me, or but let it be. You know, I'm not going to worry about that. I can't make decisions for them. I can love them. And when that happens, you become a world changer. And you have that ability to forgive other people, not to think you're the judge that has to. And think about, like, when people drive, they're like, they see someone make a move and they're like following them, flipping the bird at them, honking their horn. It's like, you're not in control of all the traffic. You know? The person made a mistake or whatever. And so, you know, just that maturity to get in the center of that, of love and grace and be a part of caring, is that you have to be a person that just lets it be. You're not controlling other people, and you're not thinking it's your job to punish everyone.
Well, I think my little story about your mom and how she didn't like, you've told me the story about the goodbyes, so I've heard that story several times.
Uh-huh.
And my days at the end, like in the summertime, I would go see her quite often, but then when I had to kind of cut back, I would go see her on Sunday and Monday. And by this point, she's already in the hospital. And it's Sunday, and Joey happens to be there when I show up. I'm like, okay, she doesn't like goodbyes. Don't say goodbye the whole time. I'm like, do not do this to her. So I get there, and I'm like, oh, hey. I go, it's my day. She can't miss my day. This is my day that I'm coming to see her, and she can't skip out on me. And then Joey and I just sat there and kind of chatted back and forth and talked about just fun stuff. But it was the presence thing that I think really, and even for me, was really good closure, because I didn't go back again. That was like my goodbye without saying goodbye to her. Right. But the presence thing, I think, is so impactful.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, Mom was happy just seeing everyone be happy.
Yeah.
She'd create this incredible Thanksgiving meal or whatever. And we were always so active. Like, one Thanksgiving, we all come back from school, and we hardly see my mom and dad. You know, we're like going goose hunting, you know, at 2 a.m, and we'd play basketball after that, then we'd play football. And here's Thanksgiving, she hasn't really seen us, but she would be so happy that her boys are happy. And we're all active, and so we had a basketball court in the backyard. We'd play a game to 1,000, you know, and she'd be looking out the window, and she just loved seeing other people that were happy. Mm-hmm. And that's what people want to be a part of it. They don't want to be pushed away. They want to be a part of everything like that. Mm-hmm. I was in our church, we're trying to build a great caring network, and so every Christmas we knew all those people who were shut-ins in prisons and insane asylums, all the places they used to have, and so I would dress up as Santa Claus. It started when I was visiting a little girl that had leukemia and was dying, and she didn't believe in Santa Claus. So I dressed up as Santa Claus. I filled my bag full of toys, and I got to the place where all these little kids had leukemia. I had little kids wanting toys. I'm like pulling my wallet out and giving them $20 bills after I ran out. And so I decided to do that every Christmas, and I would come into like an old folks home. We're going to have a party for everyone there. We'd have 3,000 parties is what we'd have, because I had 300 Santas that would go do the same thing. And like one lady, she hadn't been talking. They said, you don't need to go visit her. She can't even talk. She can't do anything. She's just laying there waiting to die. I walked in, I said, ho, 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 ho. And all of a sudden she just jumped out of bed, just sprung out like a kip up on out of bed. She says, hot diggity dog, Santa's here. So people need to not be pushed away from the parties. They need to be brought into the parties.
Yeah, that's true.
It's awesome.
Well, Tim, thanks for coming today.
Yeah, I enjoyed it.
It was really great to kind of hear your guys' stories and kind of see you guys together, because I always get to hear about, you know, that you didn't let him play when he was a kid. He's not holding a grudge or anything about that.
Yeah. Well, I locked him in the locker room.
I had to tell that story.
Yeah.
So I told him about our company BHO. Like you and Jim would be playing, and you'd never let me play. I had to just wait around the corner until you guys got done playing, and then I'd finally say, do I get to come in now? And you'd say, okay, now you get to come. And I'd be like, company B-ho.
Yeah, so I was you always wanted to rescue.
I just wanted to be the rescuer. That's funny.
That's interesting. You usually say that they make you. He just said you wanted to be. So there's a different perspective there.
He's still manipulating me. He's still trying to tell me that's what I wanted to do.
Well, it was great to have you on today and kind of hear what you've accomplished in your life. It's very inspiring. Very inspiring, and good to kind of hear again your guys' story of what has really led to the legacy from your mom and dad. So thanks for sharing today. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Home Teams Talk. Make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on your favorite podcast platform. We'll talk to you next time.